Ford's most important performance V8 was not a 427, a 428, or even a 5.0. It was a compact 289 that made ordinary cars fast, turned an English roadster into a legend, and taught the Mustang how to become dangerous. Small block, big shadow. The Ford 289 is easy to underestimate. It lived in the same decade as enormous engines with famous names. 427 Side Oiler, 428 Cobra Jet, 429 Boss. Those engines won drag races, powered NASCAR machines, and gave magazine editors numbers large enough to print in bold type. The 289 looked modest beside them. Only 289 cubic inches, 7 liters. A small block V8 installed in Mustangs, Fairlanes, Falcons, Comets, and family cars. It became so common that many enthusiasts now treat it as the engine you tolerate until a larger one can be installed. That misses the point. The 289 was not Ford's greatest engine because it produced the most horsepower. It was great because it placed useful power in a compact, relatively light package that could fit almost anywhere. It could idle politely in a family coupe. It could rev hard in a K-Code Mustang. It could power a Shelby GT350 around a road course. And in a lightweight Cobra, it could make expensive European sports cars appear to have forgotten an appointment. The engine's strength was not excess, it was balance. The Windsor beginning. The 289 belonged to Ford's small block engine family, often called the Windsor family because production centered at Ford's engine plant in Windsor, Ontario. The family began with the 221 cubic inch V8 for 1962. Ford needed a new lightweight engine for its growing range of compact and intermediate cars. The company's older Y-block V8 was durable but bulky and heavy. It had been designed for a different generation of vehicles. The new small block used thin-wall casting techniques to reduce weight. Its compact external dimensions allowed it to fit into engine bays originally designed around 6-cylinder cars. The basic design used a cast iron block and cylinder heads, a single camshaft inside the block, push rods, 2 valves per cylinder, and 5 main bearings. Nothing exotic. The cleverness came from packaging. The engine was narrow, short, and light enough to improve handling compared with a big block. It also left room around the engine for steering, exhaust, accessories, and mechanics with normal-sized hands. The original 221 quickly grew to 260 cubic inches, 87-inch stroke. The result was 289 cubic inches. The 289 arrived during the 1963 model year and rapidly became one of Ford's most useful engines. That 4-inch bore became a foundation for later Ford small block development. The 302 kept the same bore and increased the stroke. The 351 Windsor expanded the architecture again. 0-liter Mustang engines of the 1980s were therefore not unrelated replacements. They were descendants of the same basic idea. The 289 created a family tree that survived for decades. Short stroke advantage. The 289's bore and stroke explain much of its personality. 87-inch stroke made the engine over square, meaning the bore was larger than the stroke. That layout helped the engine breathe through relatively large valves while keeping piston speed manageable at higher engine speeds. The result was a V8 that liked to rev more than many larger American engines. Big block torque often arrived immediately and then began packing for home as engine speed increased. A healthy 289 felt eager. It pulled cleanly through the middle of the tachometer and continued toward higher RPM with less complaint than its displacement suggested. This mattered in light cars. A Mustang, Falcon, or Cobra did not need 500 pound-feet of torque to feel fast. Too much low-speed torque could simply overwhelm narrow 1960s tires and flexible chassis components. The 289 delivered enough torque to launch strongly, but its real entertainment came as the engine gathered speed. The exhaust note sharpened, the induction became louder. The car encouraged another gear rather than asking the driver to stop the experiment. This is why the engine feels more European than many American V8s of the period. Not because it lacked torque, because it rewarded revs, the basic versions. Ford offered the 289 in several forms. The ordinary two-barrel version was the engine most buyers encountered. Output changed by year and application, but early versions were rated around 195 to 200 gross horsepower. This was the practical 289. Smooth idle, good low-speed response, reasonable fuel consumption by 1960s V8 standards, which is similar to describing a swimming pool as reasonably dry. The four-barrel versions added stronger breathing and higher compression. Depending on year and specification, output rose to roughly 210 or 225 gross horsepower. In a Mustang weighing around 2,800 pounds, that was enough to create genuine performance. Then came the high-performance 289, the K-Code. This was the version that changed the engine's reputation, K-Code hardware. The high-performance 289 was rated at 271 gross horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 312 pound-feet of torque at 3,400 RPM. Those numbers placed it close to 1 advertised horsepower per cubic inch, a major performance benchmark at the time. But the K-Code was not simply a standard engine with a larger carburetor and a more optimistic brochure. Ford strengthened and revised key components, 5-to-1 compression. The rotating assembly received more careful preparation. The connecting rods used stronger fasteners. The main bearing caps were improved, the crankshaft and related components were selected and assembled for sustained higher RPM use. A special harmonic balancer helped control vibration. The K-Code also lacked hydraulic lifters. Solid lifters allowed more accurate valve control at high RPM, but they required periodic adjustment. The owner had to check valve flash rather than assuming the engine compartment existed only for adding washer fluid. This was a serious engine sold to serious drivers. It did not idle with perfect softness. It needed good fuel. It preferred correct ignition timing and careful maintenance. In return, it could safely operate at engine speeds that made ordinary small blocks nervous. The K-Code transformed the 289 from a useful compact V8 into a genuine competition foundation. The Fairlane test. Before the Mustang made the 289 famous, the Fairlane demonstrated why the engine mattered. Ford had introduced the midsize Fairlane for 1962. Its engine bay was designed around the new small block family, making it lighter and more compact than Ford's full-size cars. The high-performance 289 became available in the Fairlane during 1963. A K-Code Fairlane combined 271 horsepower with a relatively light body and manual transmission options. It was quick, simple, and far less expensive than an exotic sports car. Ford also used Fairlanes in competition, proving the small block could survive road racing and endurance events. The engine's lower weight improved front-to-rear balance. The compact dimensions made servicing easier. The rev-friendly design suited racing where the engine spent long periods above ordinary street speed. The Fairlane did not receive the cultural fame of the Mustang or Cobra, but it helped establish the 289 as more than an economy-minded V8. It was the rehearsal before the main performance. Mustang meets 289. The Mustang arrived in April 1964. Its success came from style, price, and choice. Buyers could order a basic six-cylinder coupe, a comfortable automatic convertible, or a V8 fastback with enough performance to create insurance paperwork. The 289 was central to that flexibility. A big block would have added weight, cost, and packaging difficulty. A six-cylinder could provide transportation, but not the emotional performance Ford wanted. The small block fit the Mustang perfectly. It gave the car V8 sound and acceleration without destroying the light, compact character that made the Mustang attractive. The early Mustang could be ordered with several 289 versions, ranging from mild two-barrel engines to the K-Code high-performance option. A K-Code Mustang received more than the engine. Ford paired it with stronger driveline components and performance-oriented equipment. Manual transmission cars used a heavy-duty clutch. The rear axle was upgraded. Suspension and brake specifications supported the additional speed. The engine code appeared as the fifth character of the vehicle identification number, making the letter K one of the most expensive pieces of alphabet in the collector market. The K code option was not cheap. It also limited other choices, especially during the early years. Buyers had to accept a more focused car with greater maintenance needs and fewer comfort combinations. As a result, production remained low compared with ordinary 289 Mustangs. That rarity now attracts collectors, but the real importance is not how few were built. It is that the K code proved the Mustang could be more than a stylish compact. It could become a legitimate performance platform. Shelby takes over. Caro Shelby understood the 289 better than almost anyone. He had already used Ford's smaller 260 V8 to create the first Cobra by installing it in the lightweight British AC Ace chassis. When the 289 became available, the Cobra received exactly what it needed: more displacement, more power, the same compact external size. The 289 Cobra combined roughly 2,000 pounds of vehicle with a tuned Ford V8 producing well over 250 horsepower in street form and significantly more in competition specification. That power-to-weight ratio changed everything. A large American sedan could absorb another 100 horsepower without becoming frightening. A lightweight roadster reacted to every throttle movement like it had been insulted. The 289 Cobra accelerated brutally, changed direction quickly, and placed American V8 power inside a chassis influenced by European sports car design. The later 427 Cobra became the poster car. Its flared body, giant tires, side pipes, and enormous engine created the image people now associate with Shelby's Roadster. But the 289 Cobra was often the sweeter car to drive. It was lighter in the nose, better balanced, and less overwhelming. The engine's rev-friendly nature suited the agile chassis. The 427 was a weapon. The 289 was a conversation that became violent only when necessary. On racing circuits, Shelby's Cobra program helped Ford challenge established European manufacturers. The Daytona Coupe, developed from the Cobra chassis and powered by the 289, improved aerodynamics dramatically and became a championship-winning machine. In 1965, Shelby American secured the FIA World Manufacturers' Championship for GT cars. The engine at the center of that achievement was not a giant big block. It was the 289, the GT350 formula. Ford then sent K-code Mustang fastbacks to Shelby American. Shelby transformed them into the 1965 GT350. The standard K-code engine began at 271 gross horsepower. Shelby added an aluminum high-rise intake manifold, a larger Holley carburetor, tubular exhaust headers, freer-flowing exhaust, and other tuning changes. Output was advertised at 306 horsepower. The GT350 also received suspension modifications, quicker steering, stronger brakes, a Detroit locker differential, lightweight wheels, and reduced interior equipment. Early cars moved the battery to the trunk and deleted the rear seat in favor of a fiberglass shelf, helping the Mustang qualify as a two-seat sports car for competition purposes. The result was not merely a faster Mustang, it was a different personality. A normal 289 Mustang felt lively and accessible. The GT350 felt impatient. The solid lifter engine produced mechanical noise, the exhaust was loud, the clutch required effort. The suspension transmitted information the standard car had politely filtered. At higher RPM, the 289 came alive. This is where the engine's short stroke and breathing ability became essential. Large, lazy V8 could have made the car faster in a straight line, but heavier and less balanced in corners. The 289 allowed Shelby to create a road racing Mustang that remained responsive rather than nose-heavy. The GT350's reputation later became attached to stripes, scoops, and auction prices. Its original achievement was mechanical. It proved a relatively small American V8 could deliver complete performance, not only acceleration. Lightness matters. The 289 weighed roughly 500 pounds in typical iron form, depending on accessories and equipment. That was not light by modern standards. It was light compared with Ford's FE series big blocks. An FE engine could add well over 100 pounds to the front of a car. That difference affected everything: steering effort, turn and response, braking distance, front suspension load, tire wear, chassis balance. A larger engine might produce more power, but the entire car had to manage the extra mass. The 289 allowed Ford to build performance cars that felt agile rather than merely forceful. This mattered especially in the first-generation Mustang, whose compact Falcon-derived structure was not designed around enormous engines. Ford later installed big blocks because customers demanded more power and drag racing prestige. Those cars became valuable and dramatic. They also became heavier in front, harder to stop, and less willing to change direction. A 289 Mustang may lose the parking lot argument. On a winding road, it often wins the conversation. The honest horsepower. Classic horsepower figures require caution. The 271 horsepower assigned to the K code was measured under the old SAE gross system. The engine ran on a test stand without the complete exhaust, accessories, air cleaner, and installation losses found in the car. Modern engines are rated using SAE net procedures with accessories and production exhaust systems installed. So a 271 gross horsepower 289 does not produce the same installed output as a modern engine advertised at 271 net horsepower. That does not mean Ford lied. The industry used the accepted measurement system of the period. Every manufacturer benefited from similarly flattering conditions. The 289's real-world performance remains the better evidence. In a light Mustang with suitable gearing, a K code could reach 60 miles per hour in roughly 7 seconds and cover the quarter mile in the mid to high 14-second range, depending on body style, transmission, axle ratio, tires, test conditions, and driver skill. A Shelby-tuned version could go faster. Those numbers were serious in the mid-1960s. More important, the engine could repeat the performance while remaining compact and streetable. The 289 was not secretly making modern Coyote power. It did not need to. The cars around it weighed less, used shorter gearing, and demanded less from the engine. A horsepower number without vehicle weight is only half a boast. Easy to modify. The 289 also earned loyalty because it responded well to modification. A 4-barrel intake and carburetor could improve breathing. Headers and dual exhaust reduced restriction. A more aggressive camshaft changed the engine's personality. Cylinder head work improved airflow. Higher compression increased efficiency and power when suitable fuel was available. Owners could choose mild upgrades for a street car or build a high RPM competition engine. The aftermarket grew rapidly because Ford installed the small block in so many vehicles. Parts became available through speed shops, mail-order catalogs, dealerships, and local engine builders. The architecture was simple enough for enthusiasts to understand. There were no variable camshafts, electronic throttle bodies, direct injection pumps, or software licenses. A mechanic could look at the carburetor, distributor, intake, camshaft, heads, and exhaust and understand where power was being gained or lost. That simplicity did not make every modification good. A huge carburetor could ruin low-speed response. An oversized camshaft could create weak vacuum and miserable street manners. Poorly matched cylinder heads and gearing could turn a responsive engine into a loud object waiting for RPM. The best 289 builds respected the original balance. Airflow, compression, ignition, exhaust, and gearing had to work together. The engine rewarded intelligent combinations more than catalog enthusiasm. The 302 takes credit. The 289 disappeared after the 1968 model year as Ford shifted toward the 302 cubic inch version. The 302 used the same 4-inch bore with a longer 3-inch stroke. That small increase created more torque while retaining the compact Windsor architecture. The 302 then enjoyed a much longer career. It powered Mustangs, Fairlanes, Torinos, Mavericks, trucks, vans, and countless other vehicles. Zero Mustang turned the engine family into a new performance legend. Because the 302 lasted longer and became easier to find, it often receives credit for the entire small block Ford story. Many enthusiasts call almost any early Windsor engine a 302, especially after decades of swaps and rebuilds blurred original specifications. The 289 became the older, smaller relative, but the 302's success confirms the 289's design quality. Ford did not need to replace the architecture. It only increased the stroke and continued developing the same basic package. A good design does not always remain unchanged. Sometimes it becomes the platform everyone forgets was already right. Why it survived. The Ford small block survived because it solved many problems at once. It fit compact cars. It delivered V8 torque. It could be produced in large volume. It accepted automatic and manual transmissions. It worked in economy versions, performance versions, racing cars, luxury cars, trucks, and boats. The 289 demonstrated that versatility more clearly than almost any later variation. Consider the range: a two-barrel Mustang driven to work, a Fairlane carrying a family, a Sunbeam Tiger using Ford power in a British roadster, a Shelby Cobra attacking sports cars, a GT350 racing on road courses, a Daytona Coupe fighting for a world championship. The same basic engine architecture served all of them. That is a remarkable achievement. Many famous engines are excellent at one task. The 289 became famous by being excellent at adaptation. Tiger problem. The Sunbeam Tiger offers another perfect example. The British Roots Group built the small Sunbeam Alpine Roadster with 4-cylinder power. Carroll Shelby helped develop a version using Ford's compact V8. The early Tiger used the 260, while later Mark II cars received the 289. The conversion worked because the Ford engine was compact enough to fit beneath the Sunbeam's hood without turning the car into a complete engineering disaster. It still required changes to steering, cooling, suspension, and structure, but the package remained usable. The Tiger became a miniature Grand Tourer with strong torque and a wonderful exhaust note. A big block could never have fit without replacing the car around it. The 289 made the concept possible. This ability to transform lightweight European chassis became one of the engine's defining talents. It provided American performance without demanding American dimensions. That is why replicas, kit cars, hot rods, and sports racing specials continued using small block Fords for decades. The engine could deliver serious power while leaving room for the rest of the automobile. Reliability with conditions. The 289 developed a reputation for durability, but nostalgia should not turn it into an indestructible machine. A properly assembled and maintained engine could last a long time. The bottom end was strong for its size. The oiling system was adequate for normal use. Parts were simple and widely available. But high-performance versions required attention. Solid lifters needed adjustment. High compression demanded appropriate fuel and correct ignition timing. Cooling systems had to remain clean and functional. Sustained high RPM increased stress on valve train components and connecting rods. Early engines also depended on maintenance habits that modern owners sometimes forget. Oil changes mattered, valve adjustments mattered, distributor condition mattered, carburetor tuning mattered, vacuum leaks mattered. A neglected 289 can run badly while sounding mechanically dramatic enough to convince the owner it has a racing cam. Sometimes it has worn valve guides and one functioning accelerator pump circuit. The engine's simplicity makes faults easier to diagnose, not impossible to create. Buying one today. A classic car advertised as having a 289 may contain almost anything from the Windsor family. Engines were replaced frequently, blocks were swapped, cars received later 302s because they were common and inexpensive. Some 289 blocks were bored, stroked, or rebuilt with mixed components. Casting numbers, date codes, assembly markings, cylinder head details, intake type, and vehicle documentation all help establish what is actually present. For an ordinary driver, a correct original block may matter less than a healthy, well-built engine. For a valuable K-code Mustang, Shelby, Cobra, or rare Fairlane, authenticity affects value dramatically. The high-performance 289 had specific internal and external features. A standard block with a reproduction air cleaner and K-code sticker does not become a 271 horsepower engine through positive thinking. Compression testing, oil pressure checks, cooling system inspection, and examination for leaks are more useful than listening to the seller describe how the car once frightened a Corvette. Pay attention to overheating, inspect for coolant contamination, listen for valve train noise beyond the normal mechanical sound of solid lifters. Check crankcase pressure and smoke. Confirm ignition timing and carburetor operation. A good 289 should start cleanly, idle consistently for its camshaft, pull smoothly, and rev without hesitation. It should not need constant excuses. The better street engine. The largest engine is not always the best street engine. A big block Mustang creates enormous appeal. The sound is deeper, the torque is immediate. The hood badge ends arguments before the car moves. But the 289 offers advantages a specification sheet does not capture. Less weight over the front wheels, more room in the engine bay, lower cooling demand, better steering response, a willingness to rev, enough power to use without immediately testing the legal system. A well-sorted 289 Mustang with a 4-speed and appropriate rear gearing can feel faster than expected because the whole car participates. The driver works the gearbox, the engine builds speed, the chassis remains balanced, the tires communicate before surrendering. A huge engine can dominate a car. The 289 cooperates with it. That difference explains why many experienced drivers prefer the smaller engine after trying both. The big block creates the story people tell at the gas station. The small block often creates the better road home. The sound of effort. A 289 also has a distinctive sound. At idle, a stock engine is smooth and restrained. Add a performance camshaft and the exhaust develops a crisp, uneven rhythm without the heavy concussion of a large displacement engine. Under load, the sound changes quickly. The intake begins to dominate. A 4-barrel carburetor opens its secondary barrels, and the engine produces a sharp mechanical roar. The exhaust climbs in pitch rather than simply becoming louder. This auditory character matches the engine's personality. It sounds eager rather than massive. A 428 announces torque. A 289 announces RPM. Neither is automatically better, but only one of them fits naturally inside a lightweight roadster and makes the driver wonder whether another 1,000 revolutions might improve the situation. Racing credibility. The 289's reputation rests on more than street nostalgia. It powered cars that competed successfully in SCCA road racing, international GT events, endurance racing, and club competition. Shelby's Cobras and Daytona Coupes became the most famous examples, but the engine also appeared in Mustangs and other Ford products prepared for racing. Competition exposed weaknesses quickly. Oil control, cooling, valve springs, bearing clearances, fuel delivery, and exhaust flow all had to survive sustained high load. The 289's success proved the basic architecture was sound enough to develop. Racing versions produced far more power than ordinary showroom engines through better heads, aggressive camshafts, higher compression, improved induction, and careful assembly. But the important point is not the maximum number. It is that the engine could make competitive power without losing the compact dimensions that gave the chassis an advantage. In racing, horsepower helps on the straight, weight and balance help everywhere. The 289 understood the entire lap, the myth of too small. Modern enthusiasts often describe engines below 5 liters as small. That judgment comes from decades of horsepower inflation. A current production V8 can produce 400 horsepower with air conditioning, emissions compliance, smooth idle, and a warranty. A modern turbocharged 4-cylinder can match the output of many classic muscle engines. The 289 should not be evaluated against those numbers alone. In its own period, 271 gross horsepower from a compact production V8 was significant. Shelby's 306 horsepower version was serious performance. Competition builds went further. The engine also powered cars much lighter than modern vehicles. A first-generation Mustang could weigh hundreds of pounds less than a current compact sports coupe. A Cobra weighed roughly half as much as many modern performance cars. Power-to-weight ratio matters more than displacement pride. The 289 was large enough to create speed and small enough to preserve the vehicle around it. That is not compromise. That is engineering discipline, the honest verdict. Was Ford's 289 better than people remember? Yes. Not because it was secretly stronger than a 427. It was not. Not because every 289 produced 271 horsepower. Most did not. Not because the engine was flawless. It required maintenance, high-performance versions could be temperamental, and modern power makes its original figures look modest. The 289 deserves respect because it delivered exactly the right amount of engine for an extraordinary range of cars. It helped turn the Mustang from stylish transportation into a performance icon. It gave Shelby the compact power plant needed for the Cobra and GT350. It powered championship-winning race cars. It transformed British roadsters without crushing their front suspension. Zero, and it taught Ford a lesson the company still uses. Performance is not only about producing more power. It is about placing the right power in the right car. The 289 did that better than engines twice as famous. A big block wins the brochure. The 289 wins the balance sheet, the engine bay, the corner, and often the driver. That is why the little Ford V8 never needed to be the biggest. It only needed one lightweight car and enough road to reach 6,000 RPM. Would you choose a high-revving 289, a later 302, or a big block for your ideal classic Ford? Put your answer in the comments, and remember that adding cubic inches is easy. Removing weight from the nose is considerably more expensive.